The Self-Helpful Podcast is brought to you by Ziglar, your premier source for equipping life and leadership coaches. Visit Ziglar.com and let them inspire your true coaching performance. This is our Peak Wellness show where we give specific focus to our health and wellness, the foundation for all we do. And in this episode, we talk about breathing. How to breathe, which is odd. I, like you, figured I kind of knew how at this point. For 52 years, I've been breathing air in and continuing to live. I was a pro cyclist. I seemed to breathe pretty proficiently to get through that. What more do I need to know? Well, it turns out there is a lot to know if we want to be fully functioning. And like so many things in our culture and our just evolution, we've kind of devolved and we're not breathing correctly. So in this show, my great friend and Peak Wellness CoHost, Randy James, who's a medical doctor and functional medicine expert and the owner of TrueLifeMedicine.com, we discuss the message of the book from James Nestor. It's called Breath. And here's a big hook of the message that may intrigue you as it did for me. Our nose is not just for smelling. That's not the only sense it's for. It's really there to breathe through primarily. Our mouth is for food. And when we use our mouth solely for breathing instead of our nose, especially at night, there are a lot of negative consequences. So James Nestor, the guy's a journalist, or he was a journalist, and he just went to study breathing and some things that he heard about. And when he and another guy spent weeks only breathing through their mouth alone, you'll be shocked at the negative results. And I encourage anybody to check the book out. Go find, I think there's documentaries at this point. But I've talked to so many people who have had radical improvements in their lives by working on more breathing through their nose, me included. And you'll learn so much in this show. Even the simple awareness of correct breathing will benefit you tremendously. I got to admit, my first thought when we start talking about breathing, is, okay, we've already covered that we eat wrong, we exercise wrong, we sleep wrong. You and I found out a few years, we're running wrong.
Yeah.
And we went from, supported running to minimalistic running, and totally makes sense. I mean, Thank God. But at some point you get to seriously, and now we're breathing wrong.
Can I do nothing right, Kevin?
I know it is. And you kind of look at it. So here's my muse. You remember our friend Lois, up on the mountain by me. I remember years ago when she's in her health nutness, and she's talking about bread, that they don't eat bread and we shouldn't eat bread. And I literally thought, come on.
Jesus eats bread.
Thank you. It's exactly what I thought. This is the bread of life, man.
Right. He is the bread.
This is biblical, you blasphemous person, you. And I think that's the dumbest thing. And of course, later to realize, okay, it's not that bread in and of itself. No, if we were having Jesus's bread, that'd be great.
Right.
But we're having the bread that we can't.
Can we even call it bread?
In America, I don't know that it's possible to get bread from the right soil with the right wheat, and we just can't. So to that degree, we'd say, bread is junk to this degree. If you can go get it in somewhere in the native bush across America or across the world, maybe you can find something. Okay, so that was my thought there. And with breathing, when you first started talking about mouth breathing and whatnot a couple years ago,
I remember, like the other day, we talked about our friend Steve Smith and fasting, and when I suggested to you that you should tape your mouth up at night, you were also terrified.
Well, I also thought my first reaction was, that's just stupid. Okay, because so this is I'm going to take it from the layman's perspective, which I had, and which is saying, here I am, I'm a human, I have to get oxygen in my body to exist. Mm-hmm. True?
Yeah.
Who cares where it comes from? If I can push it in through my ears, through my nose, through my mouth, I'm trying to put oxygen into my lungs to fuel my body. Why is it more complicated?
How it gets in there.
Thank you. Yeah. Why is it more complicated than that? And I would think to most people, that's where I came from, to go, I wasn't sold. So then we read Nestor's book, James Nestor, what is it? Nestor, called Breath. Well, and I want to dig in there, though I do want to tell people, when you and I changed to minimalistic running, the book we read, and so many people did, it was a big part of spawning this movement of minimalistic running, was Born to Run by
Chris McDougall.
And it was also one of the things that helped is he's a journalist. He was
right. Not a doc, not a scientist, he's a dude who had his own foot problems.
Yes.
And that's what led to him investigating, say, well, it can't just be like this.
Yeah. So he's an inquisitive, curious, intelligent guy who happens to be a journalist, and he goes after it and goes, holy smacks. Look at this. These guys are running in nothing in their 90s, and we're with our fancy shoes. We can't run past the age of 50 anymore. What's the deal? And so he goes and writes a book that I've told people, just read it for a good story. And I thought I heard they were going to turn it to movie at some point. Okay. So the same thing. There are a couple books, more than a couple, on breath and breathing. James Nestor, though, that's my testimony. He came at it, same thing. What was his problem?
He was a good writer. No. He did for Outside or Sports Illustrated or something. He went to, I think it was Greece, to just do a piece on freedivers. So these guys are diving 100 feet down, holding their breath for 8-10 minutes to go get pearls or whatever they do. And now freediving is a competition. Uh-huh. How low can you go? How long? And, so these crazy people.
It's my nightmare.
Right. That is a nightmare. That's what horror movies are built on, right?
Gosh.
Is this,
even the thought of it, I'm taking a deep breath. But
okay. So he goes out there, he's a good writer, but so, this is a long story, but he also notices, gosh, these guys, they're in the extremes of breathing. And that's where Chris McDougall went to the Hiawatha Indians or whoever down in Mexico.
Mexico. Yeah.
And these are the extreme barefoot runners,
right?
100 miles in a day, just because it's Tuesday and that's what we do. So he went and explored these extremes.
They were the natives doing it just because that was life. Yeah.
Well, and these guys too. So native culture on the coast this is pearl diving times 1,000 years.
Oh, this wasn't like competitive stuff. This was like go down and find a pearl to live.
Yeah. That's how it originated. It has become a competition, just like barefoot running.
Right.
Okay, so he goes over there and 10 or 20 years ago, and he writes this piece, and I think maybe that became a book too. But in that, he just started to become aware of these people, and he calls them pulmonauts, like an astronaut, right? Like, these aren't doctors, they're not scientists, they're people that have explored this area of breathing in a way different way than Western medical pulmonology, right?
Okay.
And that's that's kind of the divide. Like, we came into barefoot running not through podiatry, not through the, Western medical. In fact, it was podiatry that kind of maybe ruined us a little bit with these quote unquote supportive shoes, which actually break.
Okay, and I still want to go down that road. We just need to do one. There's
on the running.
Well, literally running. There's enough people that as an exercise outlet, that is what they would like to do, and I would encourage them in that, but they can't because of the aches and pains. So we should devote one to that. We'll do that next.
Okay, I agree.
Breath, but didn't he also have
his own issues?
Yeah,
that's right. So along the way, he says, "Well, I'm a mouth breather. I snore. Is that bad? Is that wrong?" Like you and I have said so many times, what you think is normal, your normal is not normal. And that is pathology. So, but when you go to the doctor and they don't say, "Holy cow, you're snoring. We need to do a study and a test and a this and that." It's kind of like, "Well, I feel sorry for your wife," and we joke about it. No different than we joke about our, love handles and our extra things that we all call normal. So mouth breathing, snoring, and then you and I had talked about the mouth taping actually through the dental lens. So I've been talking about that for a long time because my dad, who's an ear, nose, and throat guy, would work with the dentist and orthodontist because you spend, $2,000 on your 15-year-old's teeth, but then if he mouth breathes, his teeth are going to be abnormal by 25. And I would hold up Kevin Miller as an example.
I am. Well, can we back up to the idea that I still didn't understand from you when you're talking about mouth breathing that I got from James from the breath book, that the truth of our nose.
Yeah.
I mean, we think about the five senses. What's the eyes for? Seeing, ears for hearing, nose, smelling. And the mouth for breathing and skin for touching.
Mouth tasting.
Right. Okay, tasting. But I just thought,
You had thought wrong.
I thought, well,
you thought
I want to hit that. Yeah, even as a professional athlete, man, I'm in the pit of a race, man. I'm I'm trying to breathe through everything I can. My mouth's open, my nose open.
Have you gotten to the point in the book where he talks about athletes?
Yes.
Dang it.
I know I'm irritated. But go back to that the case is, but what they're saying is that no, we as humans were created and our nose is for breathing, not our mouth.
That is absolutely fundamentally correct. And in fact,
absolutely, you're fundamentally, we are
50% of
who
us
teaches that? Nobody.
I'm stymied. Well, you're right. We do.
I've never heard it in school. I never heard it in health science.
It's so frustrating.
Never heard it until you talking about mouth breathing, and really didn't understand it until I read the book. And it goes, seriously, the nose is for smelling. I've always thought, man, if I didn't have a nose, I don't care that much.
Because I can breathe through my mouth. Right. And our sense of smell is probably so much less than what it was because we are abusing our nose and our mouths and the breathing thing. And we've not that we should be like a bear or something, but it's one of those things, just like our sense of our feet touching the ground and the proprioception, all the things we learned about in the foot book. Same thing can almost probably be applied to all of us, that in America, in our modern place, we don't have to walk. We don't have to think about our appetites as this drives me to work. I've got to work in order to feed myself, right? It's just, in fact, Proverbs 16 something, I read it this morning that, I was going to bring it up for you, 16:16, that hunger, because we talked about appetite last time, drives a man to work.
Okay.
Now that sounds negative, but hunger is your motivation to work, is your appetite. It's a good thing because it inspires you to work. We don't think about breathing is a good thing because it is how you smell. It's how you interface with the world through a few billion molecules of air swishing and swashing through there, every 5 seconds or so. We just don't think about that. And that's why we're doing the show, is to highlight the awareness of the incredible gift and complexity of what's going on and how we're abusing it and we're suffering from it. We just don't know. It's like the fish in the dirty water. It just gets a little dirtier, you don't see it.
Speak to that. Speak to the suffering, because ultimately, if I walk in the door as a patient and I've got XYZ pathology, and let's say it doesn't have to be one that we relate specifically, just regardless. We said, okay, Dr. James, give me the pillars of health, as I always want to do. That in regards to breathing, what is my payoff? What's the benefit that I can have for giving focus to and caring about my breath, how I
that's a great question, and here's my frustrating answer, and it's become a theme that I joke about with patients is I'm going to frustrate you. So let me flip over to the analogy and say, okay, Kevin, tell me, what am I going to feel? Because I'm going to do what you guys say. I'm going to go get some organic broccoli. What's it going to do to me? What can I expect to feel?
Yeah.
And you're going to be like, it tastes good. Well, what's it doing for my liver? Just start there. Liver, kidney, eyes, ears, nose, throat. And so we cannot answer that, but we can. So that's why we go to the extremes of saying, well, who are the people who can't breathe? What is their life like? Like, what is COPD? What is asthma? What is scoliosis of somebody who's cranked over and can't take a deep breath? We've got a very dear friend with CF, cystic fibrosis. Well, holy cow, that's like 40 years in a row of almost drowning. Like, this is a tough situation. I had a friend in college, and back then you didn't make it out of your 20s, and he didn't. And she's 45.
She's over. Something like that.
So 40s is becoming kind of the goal, and we have a goal with her too. We're gonna make it, right? And okay, so her relationship, we talked about relationship with food and fasting and addiction. There's a relationship with breathing. Most of us are unaware. She's not.
Yeah.
I grew up with asthma. I know the feeling of I can't breathe. And it triggers childhood, middle of the night memories. We all know that, like, as an athlete, you've been, I don't have any more breath, but I want to beat that guy. Mm-hmm. I can suffer. I can endure. Here we go. And And that's a different sensation. So the extreme of athletic performance and the extreme of pathological stuff. And all of us are floating here in the middle with the normal snoring or those kind of things. So, but down the list, it will impact your teeth, oral health, the alignment of your teeth. And the alignment of your teeth, if they get off, that's going to impact your jaw. So people with TMJ, people with those kind of things, or gingivitis or bad breath or chronic tonsillitis, all of that, your mouth is not designed to have air swishing and swashing and drying things out all the time, and especially 8-9 hours in a row at night. And like you said, I wake up with barnacles on my teeth, that it ought not be.
Well, and then my excuse was always, man, even when as an athlete, I knew that I struggled with narrow nose passages, and I thought, well, that's, what do I do about that?
Why did you say narrow nose passage?
What do you mean? It was hard.
Why did you say narrow?
It's hard to, I don't know, small. It felt like
compared to.
Because when they have the movie where they tie the hostage up, put duct tape over their mouth, I'm already hyperventilating. Because if you do that, I can't hardly get enough.
I'm pointing out to you,
air.
You were thinking it's because my airway passages are small. Like you blamed God.
Right. And I know. And the book is saying, well, it's because you don't use them. They atrophy.
Yeah,
I know.
okay.
And you told me that. Now I read it in the book. But Randy, right there, I mean, that is ultimately. That was the most convicting part of the book, which is right in the first couple of chapters where he and the other guy, James Nestor, did the test where they closed their nose.
Closed it off.
For how long? It was like
weeks.
Weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. You know what? Let me reference. If anybody watched the movie documentary Super Size Me, where the guy ate nothing but McDonald's. So he goes to McDonald's, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, whatever. And within 1 week, 2 weeks, man, he's just in the gutter health wise. And that was so convicting. That's why, the documentary is so popular. So it was the same aspect to this test that James Nestor, this, again, investigating journalist, and this another guy did, another health guy, and they said, well, let's see what happens. And they closed their nose, pinched it.
So yeah, they actually did this through Stanford University, an ENT guy there who's a nosologist, right?
Okay.
A rhinologist. So the subspecialist down, and this is what he does. And in conjunction with him, they had to pay cash for this. This is not, normal kind of things. And they measured the bacteria, and they did all kind of measurements pre-experiment. Mm-hmm. And measuring pulmonary function tests and the speed of air through the nose, all the kind of things that we don't think about. And then they stuffed their nose, like no air moving in and out for weeks. Breathe only through your mouth. And then they did their PFTs.
Which before reading this, I would just think if you told me to do that, I think, okay, I don't.
Right,
no
like
big deal.
Clothespin to the nose, and here we're talking a little funny. And
but otherwise, I would think, who cares? I can eat, I can drink, and I can get my oxygen in. So fill my lungs. So who cares?
Yeah,
so I can't smell. No biggie. That's what prior to this.
Well, and then that's kind of the story of the book of how incredibly miserable
it annihilates their life. It's
their
unbelievable.
Sleep went down, the oxygenation went down, the fatigue went up, and they're trying to exercise, right, while breathing through their mouth and doing these jogging things at a certain pace, and yeah.
But he was James
debilitated.
James
almost.
was not a fit, well guy. Before
I would call him middle-aged, mid-40s, 50s. Little overweight, little, normal.
Yeah.
But he knew I've got a breathing issue. And when I go to the doctor, they don't say anything about that. Or I get a nose spray or something.
But he was a snorer. He wasn't super healthy. He wasn't an endurance athlete, whatever. So he was a normal person, probably not, probably mouth breathing a lot anyways. So to close his nose, I would think, any difference would be negligible. And he's saying, it wrecked me. Yeah. I mean, just like the guy on Super Size Me, a week, 2 weeks in, he's just saying, I am over. I mean, they had measurements, biomarkers, but he's saying, I am miserable. This is horrific. It's mind blowing to me to say, really?
We have to put in there right there. I think you and I have talked about this before. Do you remember the scariest part of Super Size Me? In my interpretation.
Yes, when he regulated.
So 2 weeks after he said, I'm wrecked and miserable, he ate McDonald's 2 more weeks. And at the end, he's like, I'm feeling better.
And his markers got better.
And his markers got better. It was liver markers. They adapted to the horrificness.
Because our bodies are awesome at survival.
That's right.
And that was it. Literally, it wasn't that, maybe you can do okay on McDonald's. No, his quality of life is depleting.
And he got used to it a little bit. All the markers just went down a little bit. And I would say, his longevity was going to shrink in, and his lingering, his putting up with all these things was going to go up. Well, same thing. James or Kevin or Randy, I was a mouth breather for many years. We thought it was normal, but just because we didn't know, we were lingering with bad breath, barnacles on our teeth, gingivitis, all these things that we thought.
Can we qualify that when you say mouth breather? Mainly, you're talking about at night, because in the book he's talking about people who have.
No, when I'm asking patients, this is a front and center question in our list: is do you breathe mostly through your mouth or mostly through your nose?
I don't think most people would even know.
Half the people say, "Oh, wow." I don't really know.
Yeah, because now I'm conscious of it, and I am aware that I'm struggling, and because I haven't gone to taping and whatever to do it at night because I can't sleep. So I'm in that struggle now. During the day, I am more conscious of it, and as I was even aware of it, I do primarily breathe through my nose. So when I'm sitting at my
and most people do. If people say I'm unaware of it, probably the bet is it's mostly through your nose.
But he cited a bunch of people as he was doing his study who said, no, man, even at my desk stuff,
it's chronic. It's epidemic.
I can't breathe through my nose anymore. There's mucus.
Still most. Atrophy. But if we go to 40% of people that are mouth breathing, that's a gigantic burden of pathology.
Yeah.
When you 30% obesity, like we talk, that's what the number is. That's a gigantic burden of pathology on our population. Mm-hmm. And 30% mouth breathing during the day, that's huge. There's all kinds of implications, and we'll talk about those. And if we go to nighttime breathing, it's even more. Okay. Probably, 40+%. At 50+, if you say partially through the night, at some point you're breathing for an hour in a row through your mouth, or whatever the time frame is.
Which today I still am. I mean, I haven't gotten to that point yet. But
it's not an ICD-10 code. It is not defined as pathology. Well, we could call it chronic rhinitis, right? Like stuffy nose.
That's so meaningless.
I know, because that's why we're doing the show.
You can be at death's door and you don't have a code because you just overall are wrecked and
because the system doesn't define it as a code.
System doesn't define it. But so tell me some of the inherent differences of if I take a deep breath right now, that was in my mouth, boom, air goes in. The air that we're breathing up here at 90 or at what are we at 8,500 feet above sea level has less oxygen than Florida where I was just at, but whatever. So some amount of, stuff is coming in, goes down my throat into my lungs, however that works.
So start at the very beginning. Right away, you took this big breath in, and we live at 8,600 feet where there's less moisture in the air as well.
Right.
And one of the things your nose is for is to moisturize the air as it goes down. And
so the difference of like that, there's my mouth and going.
And you just lost water. You will need to drink a little bit more because you just took a breath through your mouth, right? You lost water rather than and you breathed dry air. So the cilia on the back of your throat and your trachea, the cilia that are operating in mucus to clean things out, went, darn it, Kevin, you just breathed in dry air again. Now we're going to have to, fiddle with this thing. And so you increase your chances of a tonsillitis or postnasal drainage.
And then if I was standing outside the window right here, it would also be really cold air, pretty cold air.
Yeah. And we know that because, how it's sometimes harder to run where you're like, it feels like the spiky cold air in my chest. And breathing through your nose, it feels cold in my nose, but that's where it should feel cold.
Yeah. And right now it's so cold in my nose. If I just try to breathe through my nose, I can't handle it.
You don't like it, right? Because you're
not acclimated. Right.
Not acclimated. Right. There's a better word there.
Yeah.
I would say leave those little details to the book in the sense that, holy cow, there's just dozens of a little this and a little that. Like I was mentioning, your jaw set. We call it the allergic facies, like the one of the things people come in and especially with kids and instantaneously I say, oh, that's an allergic kid, or we call it's an allergic facies. Mouth is open, eyes are puffy, the jaw sometimes gets set back because the teeth don't line up on each other. And that's years of mouth breathing, right? That didn't happen in a week or two of a cold. Yeah. That's construct of the human body. The size of your zygomatic bone. You said, well, I have narrow naze passages, and it's kind of like saying, well, I have a small bicep. Darn it. That's why I can't lift that thing. God didn't make me with a big bicep.
I know. It's new information, though. I just had no idea.
And it started when you were 2.
Yeah.
And by the way, the word obligate nasal breathers, when I, back in the hospital days and delivering baby days, you deliver a baby, right? And you do a physical exam right away. And newborns are obligate nasal breathers. If a baby is breathing through their mouth and they have a blockage in their nose, like something's wrong, and we will immediately do surgery on and open up the nose, or there's mucus or something, and suck them out and that kind of thing. Or if they can't breathe, then they go to ENT. Obligate nasal breathers. We, as humans, were born. Just imagine that, obligate nasal breathers. But by the time kids in America are 1 or 2, and they're stuffy, congested, snotty-nosed kids that we all call them, then they are nearly obligate not nasal breathers.
I read that in James' book, and he referenced Native Americans, literally.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that they
don't allow their kids.
Right. So Native American, back in the day at least, that Native American moms would hold their baby's mouth closed to ensure and train the kid.
Yeah, it's almost like they swaddled the mouth.
Yeah, that was just one of the many beneficial health things that they knew inherently back then, that they didn't know the science. They didn't have a study.
Right.
They didn't have James Nestor going and having all the research done, but they knew that was a benefit. But I want to say to what you said a second ago that, I mean, my gosh, there's no way we can do justice to the whole book, that if you hear us kind of like the supersize me to say, look, here's a study done by a journalist, James Nestor, whose book has been on the bestseller list since he wrote Breath, or at least for the last while it has been. He did this test. They blocked their nose so that they could only mouth breathe, and it wrecked their health. And what what we come out with is your nose is made for breathing, not your mouth. And so if you just take that and believe us and start doing that, great. If you want to know more, if you want to be able to explain this to your spouse because you're doing all this weird stuff and taping your mouth, or to somebody, go get his book. Yeah, because my gosh, it's an entire book that we're trying to make a concise message on here. And ultimately what I wanted you to do is, okay, if I'm your patient, why should I breathe through my nose, and how should I go about doing that? Because even for me right now, I'm thinking, okay, during the day, we're sitting here, am I keeping my mouth shut while I'm working and breathing through my nose? I'm going to go run as soon as we finish here. I'm going to do it the best I can. I still can't. I mean, I can't hardly walk and only breathe through my nose. At some point, I get out of breath and go, oh my gosh.
I would encourage you to, me too, all of us, and I'm noticing now months later, I'm getting a little bit better. Because I will grade my exercise efficiency or whatever based on my shortness of breath sense on the incline of the treadmill, which is what I'm usually doing, and how much I can breathe through my nose or not.
Yeah.
And so I would, in your case, it's kind of like you discovered, I've got this atrophic muscle. Mm-hmm. Well, you can't go, lift 50 pounds with an atrophic bicep. You have to train it in. So as you begin your exercise, keep your mouth closed. And this will be really shameful for you, Kevin, but run a 15-minute mile, like just barely jog.
That's a walk, dude.
Right. Do a fast walk. Do something, because your muscle you're training at that moment in time is your breath.
Yeah.
And then do it for 5 minutes or something like that. And then go run like normal.
And to this, now, you don't have somebody running the mile in the Olympics, or do you? Is the goal to do it?
I forgot her name. Now, she was a sprinter.
Now, that's why I said a mile, not 100. It was maybe you could do 100 meters. I know what you're talking about. I read it too. It's a sprinter, and she's only breathing through her nose. But to do a mile, say
marathoners. The marathoners. Some of those
only
guys,
through their nose.
I think.
Because I'm thinking back to my pro cycling days, man, when the finish line's in sight, I'm breathing. But my point is that's an extreme thing. Okay, that's extreme. That's not average life. Or if it is, if you go back to the day and say, okay, they should have been breathing through their nose, but when the tiger was actually chasing the caveman, sure, open your mouth and get extra air, whatever you got to do.
Get some air, yeah.
But that's not
what we're talking about. Yeah. That's not going to be helpful to people. Okay. As we're thinking, because you're saying what as a patient, and the way I approach it through the patient is to say, okay, look, if you're breathing through your mouth, or if you don't know, it's pathology. Now there's going to be one line of implications down this patient and one line over here, and we start to try to go and figure that out. But right at the top, if you are breathing through your mouth at night, your sleep is not what it could be. Now, does it? Oh, I sleep fine. You could sleep finer. And thank you for
saying that, because we're not saying, I mean, you can be, here I am. So I'm 50 years old, according, next to the average. I mean, my biomarkers and my health and stuff, they're really good overall. They could be gooder. They could be weller. And as I look towards, my gosh, so if mouth breathing it's an accumulative thing, just like you saying, okay, if you're eating just, junk broccoli or no broccoli and you start eating broccoli, what's it going to do for me? Well, today, not accumulate over time, organic broccoli and more veggies and whatever, it's going to lead to more life.
We could look back on you and say, gosh, Kevin, what could your professional biking career have been if you'd been breathing through your nose?
Yeah.
Is a legit question. And what in between times could you be like today at 50 versus how you are now?
Yeah.
And now you can look into the future and you get to have a little bit more control.
Well, I'm thinking about going to the, my telomere health is whatever it is today. How much better would it have been over the past 50 years if I was primarily a nose breather?
Yeah, me too.
I would say
my telomeres are way worse than yours.
Yeah.
And I was the born asthmatic, allergic. I've got pictures of me in the 5th grade or something, and I look at me and I'm like, oh my gosh, I look sick. I do. And my dad was the specialist. Like we just didn't know.
Yeah.
And so here we are later, and it's worth the effort of knowing about this and then doing something about it for the overall big picture, for the breathing apparatus itself, for the jaw hinge, for sleep is a big one. Posture. Breathing affects posture, and posture affects breathing, right? You're a slumpy guy.
I am. And the story about the girl with scoliosis.
Yeah.
Who remarkably, I'm sure she did some other things, but her primary methodology that she gave testimony for healing was breathing differently.
That's right. So this is where rather than creating a vicious cycle where, I breathe through my nose, but it's not that big of a deal. I'll just put up with it. But it leads to this, which leads to that. You can slice into that vicious cycle to create the virtuous circle where, you know what? I might not be able to control something else, but I can control my breathing, and I'm just going to do that. And that will likely lead to improvement in sleeping, improvement in posture, improvement in brain health or something like that.
I was going to say, if you find yourself at your desk and you realize after hearing this that, my gosh, I have my mouth open a lot, I'm breathing in, and you just focus on keeping your lips shut, nobody's going to notice, and sit there and breathe through your nose an extra 45 minutes today and the next day.
And so that's our main point is be aware. Be aware. And we keep talking about these potential consequences down the road. So sleep for sure, mouth health for sure, posture health for sure. By the way, mouth health and jaw health, people with headaches, is mouth breathing related? Absolutely. Would I ever look at somebody and say, oh, well, your headaches is caused by mouth breathing? No. But is it related? Of course it is. So address it in some
So you could find
way.
10 people that are dealing with headaches, migraines, whatever, and say, okay, everybody start nose breathing, more exclusively, and a couple of them are going to get radical differences. The other ones that may not be
maybe not.
Primary causation.
It won't hurt any of them.
It won't hurt any of them.
And so we're doing no harm. We can only do help. The moving on down the posture and the breathing and probably the main thing, Kevin, that that I would land on in terms of well-being, not wellness and health and those kind of things, but the bigger picture of well-being is the connection of breath to mind and heart. Mm-hmm. Right? So one of the things that really got me about the book was he didn't, because so many books about breathing very quickly will go into spiritual, religious kinds of areas. And so,
or like the other one that we read, where it goes into where oxygen comes from, and
or super science.
Just didn't care.
Like it came from outer space, and this, it's super science that doesn't.
Which, if you want to know more about that in oxygen, breathtaking, I can't remember the guy's name, is another.
He was a pulmonologist. He was an ologist.
Doc, but it was very clinical and whatever. And for me, it was just great information, but it didn't help me. Okay,
and his main takeaway, the last chapter in his book was about cystic fibrosis. His main takeaway was, look at our science. Look how great we are. We've helped people to quit smoking, and we got these great medicines. What's the future going to hold? And I'm like, we're going to have a whole lot of overweight, unmotivated people breathing through their mouth at this current pace. And that didn't motivate me. What does motivate me is, okay, I do breathe. I am a spiritual being. Mm-hmm. I'm not a Buddhist. I'm not these other religions that tend to talk a lot about breathing. So I've always been a little bit leery of what does all that mean. Mm-hmm. And here's what I got from Nestor's research was the science of breathing. He found a document dated at nearly prehistory. So we're really murky pre-3,000 years, right? The Egyptians were about 3,000 years ago. We have a whole lot of Mesopotamia, Egyptian, all this kind of stuff. Well, a little bit further east in the ancient places, and so probably 3,000 to 5,000 years on pottery, a document that spoke of breathing without religion. Mm. So the science, quote unquote, of the day, and it basically said something like, take deep breaths, it's really good for you. And so the reason that all religions of the earth have a component of breath awareness is because breathing works. It really does. It's a part of spiritual well-being, physical well-being, emotional well-being. It's so fundamental. It's so real. It connects you like nothing else with life. And the minute you start holding your breath, in about 30 seconds, for most of us, you are very aware of discomfort and pain and death. Mm-hmm. And in about a minute, most of us are probably fainting, and in 3, you're dead. So that spoke to me of the foundational, fundamental, we take it for granted. I'm not going to do that anymore. And even though I can, and so in our tradition, and we talk about what is the very first thing that happened in human history was the breath of God. Breath. And throughout the Bible, the word pneumos and pneuma and pneumo and all of those kind of things, and just the theme and the thread of, and it's the same word used for spirit. So it gets, intertwined with these ideas. And I would say the same thing is true in a human. So if we speak to well-being as something that is, you don't think your elbow's in pain right now, but you wouldn't say, oh gosh, my elbow is so great today. I'm doing really well. Mm-hmm. That's the foundation of my well-being until somebody sticks a knife in your elbow. We don't think that way. So well-being does have something to do with my liver and my kidney, my heart, my health, and all that kind of stuff. But it has more to do with how's my marriage? How's my motivation? Do I like my job? Do I want to be here today? What am I going to do tonight? Do I get to eat dinner? And then even a little bit more, why am I here? Why do I breathe? And so many of us just don't go down that pathway, right? We don't contemplate. So what I'm talking with patients now is for the uninitiated, that's not right. For the person that doesn't have a thought process down this kind of a pathway, we're just going very clinical. Tape your mouth and see what happens. Breathe, 10 times a minute and see what happens. Breathe, that's very clinical. But to somebody else where we're saying, and now here's where we can look at the science. So this is what really inspires me is what's the not pulmonology science, because they're going to talk about, how many liters of air and PFTs, pulmonary function tests, and what's the forced FET, forced expiratory air in 1 second. So these are the measurements of, do you have asthma or not? Do you have COPD or not? Right? We're going to give you a clinical diagnosis. Yeah. And over here, we're talking about, do you have a sense of well-being or not? Well, how do you define that? Now, the science over here, through organizations like HeartMath and other, this has been done since the 80s, right? The biology of belief and other experiments where, as much as you can randomize and create a placebo and do a prospective trial and those kind of things of breathing and breath work, it does do things in the body. There is, now what do you call these things? Harmony?
Well, so let me ask about that, because when we talk about anxiety is such a big buzzword these days, and to think back, it really got me, Randy, thinking back to, let's think about my grandfather, okay? This is just 2 generations away. Excuse me. And he would wake up in the morning, total peace. There's no screens. There's no noise. They're out in the country, birds chirping, make his cup of coffee. I mean, this just was life. He wasn't sitting there trying to be some righteous, spiritual, at peace guru. It's just life. You get up, nothing's going on. The sun comes up. He puts his stuff on, goes out to into his farm and works and has lunch, and it's just kind of this peaceful existence. Now today, the same person is going to be primarily sitting at a computer, looking at a screen.
We'll go back. They probably went to bed late. They probably didn't sleep well. They wake up. They probably threw some caffeine in and ate a donut. Then they went and sat at a computer.
Style and pace of life. And think about his breathing, my grandfather's breathing in this peaceful environment and just lifestyle, because that's just what life was. And now we have this squirrel lifestyle of constant barrage, constant activity, multitasking, constant social media, constant stimuli. And if we think about that and think about his breathing, and I wish we could, his breathing, if he spent all day primarily, there is a in, out. If you just think about that compared to over here, the person who is shallow anxiety breathing that we don't even think about, just kind of squirrel breaths, and we're kind of going on because I know you're going to talk about how it changes with email and changes with this or whatever, and that the accumulative effect of the days, the weeks, the months of, if I can even just say anxious, shallow, unthoughtful, unpeaceful, anxiety-ridden breathing, as opposed to no.
Right. It's unmeasurable. It's nearly unimaginable. And therefore, it puts us at great risk.
Well, that's what's convicted me. I don't think about my breath.
You don't.
Unless I'm out there exercising, even then I don't. But just to sit here in my office and don't see it, and then realize so often that I'm holding my shoulders up, I'm breathing shallowly. I just didn't even think about it. Now I'll let my shoulders drop.
And the more you do that, the more you're aware of that, the more you will be doing that. Mm-hmm. That's a good thing. So we don't say get mad at yourself. You just gently redirect yourself. I do want to bring up the studies because that's so key. People are hearing this talk about, and they're saying, well, I don't do that. And I'm going to look at you and say, you don't know what you don't know. And
culturally, statistically, most of us are.
Oh, well, I would look at people and say, I don't care what you think about your breath. You don't really know. Unless you're a breathologist of yourself and you have breath work and you are breath aware, you don't know, because we don't have biomarkers for this. We don't have a sense other than I'm getting ready to die, right? Other than these kind of things, it's so subtle and so small. So let's just tell people the studies have been done. And if you're sitting at a desk and doing email, your breath changes. The pace, the depth. And if you get bad news, if you open up an email and it's bad, your breath changes. If you open up an email and it's good, your breath changes. So just accept it. And no different than if you bend over and pick up a 20-pound dumbbell and do something like that, it changes your muscle. I don't care what you think about it. Now, it's going to be a little subtly different from this human to that human, but it has an impact. Therefore, think, set up your desk in an ergonomic fashion and, sit up straight. And I would say to myself, and you and I have done this for years now, I don't turn on my computer ever until it's, 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever. Like the first couple of hours in the morning are no screen. Mm-hmm. There have been days when I do wake up and I'll hear a bing and I'll, curiosity got me or whatever else. And I can feel it. I can feel the slip into, well, I'll just check the news or I'll just check whatever. And so I don't want to say I'm proud of myself or something, but I guess I'm grateful.
Sure.
That my appetites got changed, and my appetite is not to check my phone. My appetite is to have a cup of coffee and do the things that I do, and I'm so grateful. But I'm also training up my kids to say, don't start your day that way. To my teenage son, and let me help you by, it has to be plugged in up here, and in fact, I'm going to just put a block on it so you can't even turn it on until 9 o'clock. Now, by the way, I just read a report on the newer age, the young teens, the 12 to 16 now, and they all have phones, right? And the impact. Mm-hmm. And you said the word shallow. There's a great book called The Shallows that's saying, what is the internet and the phones doing to our brains? And I say, what's it doing to our lungs? And if we breathe shallowly, is that contributing to a shallow brain? I'm going to bet, yeah.
Just how would a secure person respond? Or was that the response of a secure person? And if I think about myself, am I I want to be the kind of person who responds as a secure person. I don't want to be insecure. Well, did that reaction belie what I would? So in this, do I want to, my breathing, my state throughout today, do I want to be a peaceful, confident, healthy person? I want to breathe deep. Yes.
And I was just thinking of water. You, Kevin Miller, can't really impact the ocean, right? Like, it's pretty big. It's stable. And we talk about, even scripturally, deep calls unto deep. That idea of deep. I want to think deeply. I want to know my wife deeply. I want to experience life deeply. I want to drink deeply. I want to breathe deeply. And if you are, to me, that speaks of being anchored, stable, right? And if you're just flopping in the shallows, like you got nothing. Like, I don't even really want to hear what you have to say.
Well, even the meditation aspect, where for years, I've known about meditation for so long. They always talk about breath. Hey, pay attention to your breath. And it always felt spiritually, hoodoo guru, some supernatural type thing. And I'm going, my gosh, if nothing else, not to dismiss any of that, but if nothing else, it's just saying, no, take a moment to breathe calmly and deeply, just from a medical, clinical, physiological, that then affects our mental and overall health standpoint. Just like I would go, I'm going to go run for 30 minutes here in a minute. How about making sure that I breathe? Now, if I can do it all day, that'd be great. But if I need to take a breathing break to make sure that I am.
We talked about, setting up your day, and I would tell Kevin Miller, if you desire to be becoming 51 and breathing through your mouth more, well, set your timer.
Breathing through my mouth less?
Sorry. Set your timer.
Yeah.
For 1 minute every other hour, and make yourself do it. No different. You're going to go run because it's on your schedule. Yeah. And it's important to you.
And I'm used to measuring it. I have my little wearable device here, and I measure my run and stuff like that.
Does yours measure breath? Mine gives me breaths per minute at night, and I stink. I'm like at 12, 13, and James Nestor says, he does get into sort of that synchronicity of the rhythm of breathing, and we're supposed to breathe kind of around every 5.5 seconds or something like that.
Okay, I don't even.
Every 5.5 seconds means 5.5 breaths per minute equals.
Well, at some point, aren't we, when you talk about measuring this, isn't it so as a 50-year-old, you can look at the resting heart rate averages for somebody your age. Type in your age and you can see that. And if you are, I know I looked it up. So at 50, kind of the lower range is 60 and a higher range if you could have one of, racing heart rate at 90 or something like that. And obviously, I don't know, maybe this isn't fair, but in layman's terms, if your heart is having to beat less, it's having to work less, which should by proxy mean your body's in better health and wellness, and it's not having to work so hard. We know elite athletes, especially endurance athletes, have a very low resting heart rate. And so
all that can be said for your breath. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. So looking at your resting heart rate, which you can get a wearable device, you can get a cheap Fitbit probably, I guess, that'll do that. Heart rate variability is
a different thing.
But it still would have to do with your overall...
In shapeness, not so much.
No?
That's a good sort of segue into... Hang on, because your heart rate variability is the milliseconds of variance between heartbeats. Not, I'm at 50 beats a minute, then I go up to 60 beats a minute, then I go down to 40 beats a minute. That's not the heart rate variability. It is between beat to beat to beat. What's the variance of milliseconds?
Okay.
Between this one to that one to this one to that one. And you want more,
right?
Like variability indicate, which seems weird. Like you would think that a slow and steady
all day long, man.
But it's not. It's kind of like think about like cross training. Like the more well-being person. Like the Olympic athlete, the Olympic runner I would look at him and say he looks frail.
Yeah.
He can't lift up a big box or whatever. And he is.
Yeah.
And the guy who's only a super duper weightlifter is too big. And he's also frail down that pathway. So we want multitudes of capacities and all these varieties equals well-being overall. Same with heart rate variability. And so it's not your in-shapeness per se that increases heart rate variability. This is where, and this is so interesting, the mind-heart-breath connection comes in.
Okay.
Because the biggest impact on your heart rate variability is what your mind doing.
Again, I have never really seen that perspective out there. Anybody who's pursuing health these days and reading should be hearing about the brain-gut connection. That's gotten to be popular within the demographic of people, health and wellness. But
the brain, heart, breath connection, and again, from my upbringing, it always smacked of new age, kind of hooey gooey, weird, whatever. And it never interested me until I'm thinking, wait a minute, not only is the way I breathe going to have a direct impact on my heart rate, my blood pressure, my posture, my all of these things, but there is a brain, heart, breath connection. And whatever XYZ religion doesn't have a corner on that, it's because it's always been that way. And we as Americans are great at ignoring it. We're distracted in the shallows.
Yeah.
And so because we don't care about slow, steady, deep things. We can't sit by ourselves alone in a room for 15 minutes without boredom and whatever. We must have distraction because we aren't deep. We aren't satisfied within our own peaceful well-being.
We aren't at peace.
We are not at peace.
And so when we look at this, I bubble up though. I mean, if somebody's hearing this, and we're going to have weller people listening to that. That's by proxy. That's who our audience is, obviously. But if you're hearing this and have if the average American, the average overweight, if not obese American with a lot of things, hears this and goes, oh, well, I just got to start breathing through my nose. Sure, you're going to have a hell of a time being able to.
It will feel hellish.
Well, and I don't even know if that's where you should start. You may need to start in some other ways. I mean, add it to that, but I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking about the average person who's average American in ill health, mucousy, who's obese, who's taking in inflammatory foods and a sedentary lifestyle.
Well, and also allergies, allergic rhinitis.
You might need to
food connection.
I'm saying to help enable the ability to even start advocating for nose breathing.
Just like if somebody is walking in and they've got their foot in a cast, we're going to say, well, don't start running.
Yeah.
You need to heal and PT and
like
all
this
of
may
that.
not be, this is not a 101. I don't know if that's fair. Is this
I do
depending
think
on your
it's
level
fair
of
to
health?
say awareness, and almost any human out there, however bad you are, you can sit there and be aware of your breath and breathing through your nose for 1 minute.
Okay, well, yeah. So today, if no matter where you are, you can eat a little bit better, eat more vegetables, eat less junk, or don't eat at all. You can exercise a little better, a little more, or rest a little better, a little more. You can breathe better today. We all could do that. So if this is an awareness thing, yeah, as you said, we all take
Awareness
that.
number one, and sit there for a minute, breathe through your nose.
Yeah,
Hold your breath.
yeah.
And I did appreciate Nestor in the back of the book where he's like, there's multiple, now again, the words that are associated with breath work exercises have religious definitions, because in the Hindu tradition, in the Buddhist tradition, that's who's in yoga tradition, that's who's been doing this. And I would say, okay, it's a name, it's a word, it's not, but the foundation of it is still, this is how we're created. This is.
And again, the book Breath by James Nestor primarily is just hitting this he's looking at it like exercise and eating. It's just he was looking at it, came to it at a health aspect. You mentioned holding your breath. That's another person people can check out of interest if you want to dig further, is Wim Hof, which is spelled
W-I-M. It's Wim Hof.
But yeah, whatever.
Well, and he basically, I think, took the principles that Nestor talks about, and Wim Hof popularized them. Also with the extremes. He's the Iceman and, running a marathon.
Well, I thought about him because you talked about if we hold our breath for a minute, most people get lightheaded, 3 minutes are going to die. Of course, he's going to say, no, you can hold your breath for
10 or
10 and which you literally can.
You can.
Just like we were saying, you can actually not eat for many days and be okay, or you should be able to. And he's saying you should be able to not breathe for 3, 5, 10 minutes.
So Kevin, in summary, what we're telling people is to listen to us and basically
don't eat, don't breathe,
and don't breathe.
Don't wear fancy shoes.
Yeah. So it is, but at the same time, we're saying, no, don't think about it like that. We're going to say, no. Understand that you need to feast on the biochemistry that happens when you fast. And your body needs the biochemistry that happens when you breathe deep and through your nose. Feast on that.
And it would be breathing deeper, and by proxy, literally breathing less. So if you go about right now and your heart rate, sitting at your desk, reading email, doing your work, or going to the grocery, whatever, your heart rate is right here. You're thinking you're breathing mindlessly, which we pretty much all do. And now say, okay, take the next minute, even if you're grocery shopping, and just breathe through your nose. You will breathe less. And so
and you will be better for it.
And you will be better for it.
Well, thank you for joining us on this journey to elevate our own experience and improve the way we show up for others. James Nestor, again, is the author of Breath, kind of the catalyst of this topic on breathing. James Nestor, Breath. Again, you can find the book. You can find a lot of information. There's other podcasts that get more clinical, probably, if you want to do that. There's probably some videos on it, but the story in and of itself, which I think is going to take you reading the book or listening to the book, is incredibly entertaining, interesting, and convicting. Randy James, my friend and co-host on the show here, you can find him at truelifemedicine.com. It's so cool that a lot of you do that. You come in from around the country and I get to actually connect with you since my office is right here in his medical offices at True Life Medicine. Friends, if you appreciate the podcast and want to share this with others, do so. Give us a rating on Spotify. Leave us a rating and a review on Apple is just a great way to help people find us. You can subscribe on YouTube and watch almost all the episodes that we do here. You can find that at Kevin Miller CO, which is where you can also find me on social media. We've got a lot of reels that we're doing, excerpts of the shows, and tens of thousands of people watching those. It helps you get just great benefit from those little clips, and it might show you whether you want to go listen further to a show as well. And if you want to learn how to master your own inner drive, get my book, What Drives You, on Amazon in about any format you could desire. And until next time, stay driven.